Hi, my name is Sam from Worlds.com and welcome to a new camera comparison video between the Oppo Find X3 Pro and the OnePlus 9 Pro. Well, I hope by the end of this video you will get an idea how good both cameras actually perform. So, let's start straight away with our video. Let the facts speak. In this video we are going to show you the video and photo performance indoors as well as outdoors, the different modes like portrait and macro and slow motion feature, the autofocus and sound performance and how the cameras are handling nighttime shooting. So first we are going to show you the video performance. We shot on both in 4K 30 frames. At first we thought that the OnePlus 9 Pro was overall sharper, but then we noticed that it had problems by focusing on what's in the foreground. The Oppo is a little softer, but seems way more natural and more pleasing to the eye. The color profile on the 9 Pro is more accurate, whereas the Oppo has a greenish touch here and there. But it is handling the situation better than its competitor. The OnePlus has better dynamic range, as you can see when coming from a not so well lit environment into a well lit environment. But then we notice something strange. As same as the Xiaomi Mi 11, the OnePlus weirdly skips frames, even more as the Mi 11. By the way, check out our camera comparison of the Mi 11 and the Find X3 Pro. Okay, let us check out the different cameras. First, you see the ultra-wide lens camera, this time with a little more contrast on the Oppo. Next, the wide camera. Again, the OnePlus somehow has problems with the focus. We have no idea what's going on. Zoomed in 2 times, the Oppo definitely does a way better job. Again, no idea what's wrong with the OnePlus. Right next to the Find X3 Pro, it looks like, sorry that I have to say it, but trash is the only word that comes to my mind. Now, let's max out the zoom on both devices. The Oppo clearly outperformed the OnePlus again in this one. It has definitely a better zoom feature, at least in terms of video. By the way, we are still doing our giveaway. To take part, click on the link in the description. Next up, we test out the stabilization feature. First, a short run with the feature turned off. The Find X3 Pro on the right side is slightly better than the 9 Pro on the left. And now, with the feature turned on. As you can see, the Oppo really got smoother. That is something you can't say about the OnePlus. It got even worse. Which is why we actually had to test it again. Because we thought we did something wrong, but we didn't. It is actually true that OnePlus's stabilization feature somehow destabilizes. Which doesn't really make sense. It got to be a software bug that needs to be fixed. Let's see how the cameras are handling getting close to an object. It seems like the OnePlus is doing a better job, but more on that macro feature later on. As we are already talking about focusing, here's how both camera setups are auto-focusing on something that suddenly appears in the frame. As we already mentioned, the OnePlus seems to have trouble with its autofocus. On the other hand, its competitor doesn't, as you can see. The autofocus on the Oppo is fast and accurate, whereas the OnePlus's is noticeably slower. From the slow autofocus on the OnePlus, let us move on to the slow motion feature. Both record 480 frames per second and 720p. The Oppo is cropping in way more, but the contrast on the OnePlus is so high that it makes it lose a lot of details. For example, take a look at my jacket. You can see more details on the Oppo, and on the OnePlus it is just a black field moving through the frame. That's it for the video feature comparison for now. I think the more interesting part is how the cameras are actually taking pictures. So, first we check out the portrait mode, which is always a tricky part, because it comes down to how good the algorithm is recognizing what's going on in the picture. OnePlus's depth of the field looks more natural, but it has trouble in differentiate between foreground and background, as you can see with the sign in the back, which somehow becomes part of my head. The depth of the field on the Oppo, on the other hand, looks in our taste too unnatural. The blur is just too much. Overall, the OnePlus has more contrast and appears sharper. The Find X3 Pro has again a greenish tone. In direct sunlight, the contrast on the 9 Pro is slightly too much, and it also makes my skin seem really pale. But once again, the algorithm has troubles recognizing contours. But as you can see, the Oppo also has some problem. The skin tone though is way warmer. Next up, the front camera in portrait mode. This time the Oppo appears sharper, but once again blows out the background. The clouds in the background kind of look like an oil painting. In recognizing the edges, both are not really doing a great job. But it seems like the devices switched their role. Now, Oppo's blur looks more natural. So far, so good. Let's move through the different cameras of each phone. The ultra-wide and both look pretty much the same, except that the Oppo has slightly more contrast and saturation. The same appears with the wide camera. Zooming in further, there is still no big difference noticeable. With 5 times zoomed in, you start noticing that the Oppo is losing sharpness, which gets even more obvious 10 times zoomed in. At 20 times, both are useless, but the Oppo is still way worse. Taking a look at the pictures from inside, it gets even more obvious that the OnePlus performs better by zooming in. Which is weird considering that the Oppo had the upper hand when zooming in whilst recording a video. But what the Oppo is exceptional at is the macro feature. Here are some samples from how close you can get with the Oppo versus the OnePlus. The Oppo clearly outshines the OnePlus in this one, as you can even see the single pixels off the screen. Before we move on to the nighttime conditions, here are some samples for you to compare the overall photo quality. We notice that the OnePlus 9 Pro mostly has a little more contrast compared to the Oppo, but see for yourself. Quality-wise, we could spot a significant difference, but we noticed in terms of saturation that the Oppo is a bit too much. The OnePlus is definitely better in regulating the white balance at night. In this one, the saturation and the little more contrast actually looks better on the Oppo. But overall we notice that the OnePlus seems to expose longer, which lets the light glow more. But even though the exposure time was roughly the same. Here are some samples for you to compare the overall photo quality. Now the portrait mode at night, in which both have trouble at. This time I took pictures of a colleague. Both cameras either take too much from the background into the foreground or blur out parts from the foreground which should be in focus. Even though the depth of the field is again slightly too much on the Oppo, it definitely does a better job. The OnePlus tries to put bokeh on light sources in the back, but does a really bad job, as you can see in the lettering above his head. Next up, another 2 samples how bad the OnePlus is handling portrait mode at night. For the first one, a little hint. Look at the building in the back. The second one speaks for itself. As we only notice a little bit more grain in the portrait mode in the pictures from the Oppo, it is a totally different situation when it comes to taking videos at nighttime. As both perform quite weak, the OnePlus comes with tons of grain. The Oppo is still bad, but definitely performs better as its competitor. Last but not least, the sound quality. Let's hear some samples from indoors and outdoors. Not for the first time, an argument had broken out over breakfast at number 4 Private Drive. Mr. Vernon Dursley had been woken in the early hours of the morning by a loud hooting noise from his nephew's Harry's room. Okay, so this is the sound of the Oppo Find X3 Pro outdoors next to a busy street, and this is the sound of the OnePlus 9 Pro also next to a busy street outdoors. In terms of sound quality, we couldn't hear a significant difference. In our opinion, both performed quite well. Okay, it is time to summarize all the categories that we went through. We started out with comparing the video feature. In this case, we think that the Oppo did a better job in every aspect. And we also got to mention the problem that appeared with the OnePlus. To name them again, the focus problems and the problem with the stabilization. We think that this has got to be a bug that needs to be fixed. In terms of the portrait photos, the Oppo works more accurately in recognizing the contours. The zoom is definitely better on the OnePlus. On the other hand, the Find X3 Pro's macro feature is incredible, but the need for it is questionable. It is still a fun feature to use though. Overall, the quality of the pictures is mostly the same, or at least it appears to us as if they are the same. I'm speaking about the sharpness. In terms of the color rendering, it depends on what suits you best. We think that the OnePlus has more accurate colors, whereas the Oppo sometimes is too oversaturated with too much contrast. The front camera won the Oppo because it has a wider field of view and seems sharper. The audio quality that both are recording is somehow the same, which is why it is a draw on this one. In conclusion of the nighttime shooting, we think that the Oppo has the overall upper hand here. Everything taken in consideration, in our opinion, the Oppo comes out as a slightly better choice of both setups. Let us know in the comments below which camera you like more. We would love to hear if you came to the same conclusions as we did. And as always, if you liked this video, feel free to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to this channel. Till then, take care and see you soon.